And now we will learn about one of the best security features in QuickBooks, the Journal Report. The Journal Report is your first line of defense because it is the only report in the entire QuickBooks that shows every transaction ever entered into the file. Additional to this, it shows these transactions in the order in which they were entered into the computer, regardless of date. It also assigns a transaction number to every single transaction, regardless of type. So if you combine these three attributes, you have something that will always tell you what went in, how, and when. Order entered helps because, first of all, if you put in many different kinds of transactions, you can see where you left off. Most reports only show one or two different types of transactions, and if you're putting in many, you don't know where you left off. But the journal will help you. If you open it up and go to the bottom, you will see the most recently entered transactions. It can also help you fix date mistakes because it will show the order entered regardless. From the main menu, click Reports, Accountant and Taxes, Journal. Notice when the journal first opens up, it does not open up in order entered. By default, it opens up this month to date. So if it's any of these date ranges, it will be in date order, not order entered. I happen to be recording this video in July of 2016, specifically July 6th. So for me, in my Windows clock, this month to date means July 1 to July 6th. And we're going to fix this in a moment. But right now, it's in date order, even though it seems to be in transaction number order. Notice the journal has 2 lines for every transaction, and the leftmost column is the transaction number, which can never be changed or removed. The second column is what type or what kind of transaction it is, and the third column is the date of the transaction, not the date it was entered, the date the transaction happened. And of course, the rest of the columns have more information about each transaction. You could always double-click on one of the lines and actually see or edit or delete any of the transactions listed here in the journal. But you'll notice it's only showing the first 7 transactions. It's not showing all the transactions. In order to get the journal to show order entered, and in order to get the journal to show every transaction that has been entered into the file, go to the top left and click the pull-down arrow and choose the very top date range choice as All. Now that you chose All, the journal is now showing every transaction, and it's not showing it in date order, it's showing it in order entered. And I can prove it. If we scroll down, you can see we get all the way to the most recently entered transactions. How many transactions have been recorded into this file? Obviously 42 transactions, and the checks, these checks have been entered, well, these checks were recorded as having happened in August. We don't really know yet the date and time they were recorded into QuickBooks, but stay with us, you'll see. Just like deposits, you can double-click on any of these checks, and you could edit them if you have the permissions. Now, I'm going to prove to you that this is in order entered and not date order. If you look at the dates of the checks and the transaction numbers, it looks like it could be in date order and not transaction number order. However, watch what happens when I double-click the August 5th check and I change the date on the August 5th check back to July 5th. Then I click Save and Close, and yes, notice the dates go August 2nd, August 4th, July 5th, August 6th. However, the transaction numbers are still in transaction number order, 39, 40, 41, 42. So changing the date did not change the transactions position in the journal because it's still the 41st transaction and it's still listed 41st in the list of all transactions that show up in the journal. Now, if I change the date range back to this month to date, let's see, this month to date as it was, notice you don't see it at all. If you click here and you click, even if you click next month, notice you don't see the August 5th. Anytime you choose a date range that's not the top one, anytime you make any of these choices or put in a custom date range, your journal will be in date order, not order entered. The only way to get it to be in order entered is to click all to see the results of all transactions regardless of date. And when you scroll to the bottom, you get the most recent ones, so you know where you left off, and you can see anytime the date looks inconsistent with the transaction number, that should be a red flag that something was entered not in date order. Transaction number helps you see deleted transactions in relation to the others. The voided deleted transaction detail report shows anything that is not in the journal. So, if we look at our journal, we can see that there is really no break in the transaction number. But what if there was? For example, if it went 39, 41, 42, we would know that number 40 has been deleted. So any kind of skip in the transaction number tells you that whatever transaction number is missing, that transaction has been deleted, and that transaction number will never be reassigned to another transaction in this file in QuickBooks. Now let's prove it. Let's double-click this check, and let's delete this check. Click OK. Now when we look at the journal, we can see transaction number 38, 39, 41, and 42. So if you're looking at the journal and there's a skip number, that tells you transaction number 40 has been deleted. Anything that has been deleted since the beginning of the file shows up on the voided deleted transaction detail. So from the main menu, click Reports, Accountant and Taxes, Voided Deleted Transaction Detail. Don't forget to change the date range to all. Now, there's a few in here because I'm using this file for many videos and sometimes I want to change things and I delete. However, if you scroll to the bottom, you get the most recently deleted transactions. So let's take a look at this. We're looking for transaction number, we're looking for a check oh, here it is. Is this it? Check number 1? Nope, that wasn't it. Check number 1, okay, date July 8th to Chase Bank. Well, we don't really know what we deleted because we went by transaction number. There is a way to make this report show transaction number. From the top left, click Customize Report, and where it says Columns, choose Transaction Number and check it off. By the way, in this Modify Report window, make sure Display is selected. Click OK, and now we're looking for transaction number 40. Here it is. Transaction number 40 was added on July 1 at this time, and transaction number 40 was deleted on July 6th at this time. So here's all the information you need about every transaction that was deleted. In fact, transaction number 13 was also deleted, and if we go back to our journal and scroll up to where transaction 13 would have been, you can see the numbers go 11, 12, 14, 15. So what does that mean? It means that every transaction in the file is either in the journal if it's not deleted, or in the voided deleted transaction detail report if it has been deleted. one thing you must do if you're using the journal for security purposes is add a column for entered last modified. Right now, the journal is not showing the date and time that something was entered or last modified. This date column is only showing the date of the transaction. The best thing to do is to click in the top left button where it says Customize Report. In the Modify Report window, you get 4 tabs. Make sure the Display tab is the one that's selected. Now we can add this column by clicking here and making sure the check mark gets added in the margin. Click OK, and now the journal, we can make it a little wider, and now the journal also has a column for entered last modified. So if you'll notice, even though the date of the 11th transaction that was recorded into QuickBooks is July 10, I entered this on June 27th at this time. Again, if we scroll all the way down, we can see that even though the transaction was dated August 6th, I physically entered this into the file on July 1. Obviously, this helps with security and finding out exactly what happened. Now, there are 2 points about this column that you have to be careful about. Number 1, it only shows the most recent change. So if there have been several changes to a transaction, it'll only show the most recent one. Watch. Right now it says that this check was recorded on July 6th and the date was July 5th. Now, July 5th is the date of the check. However, the date that it was recorded into QuickBooks is July 6th because this column says when it was entered or last modified. Okay, but if I scroll all the way up here, notice this transaction is dated July 5th, but it was entered on June 27th. So it might have been entered on June 27th, or June 27th might have been the last time it had this particular deposit has been edited or modified. And I'm going to prove it. Today in real life is July 6th, and my Windows clock reflects that accordingly. So if I double click this deposit and I make some change, for example, instead of 200, I make it 190. So I change the money amount, and then I click Save, and then I click Yes. Notice it will say July 6th, but you can still see that the transaction before that was recorded on June 27th. The transaction after that was recorded on June 27th, and this was modified on July 6th. So you know it was changed, not entered on July 6th because of the dates of the surrounding transactions. Now, in the next video, I will show you a report that shows every single change to every single transaction. The journal will only show the most recent change. The best thing about the journal, especially using the column of date entered last modified, is that the journal is the only report that will reveal if the Windows clock has been changed. So let me give you an example. My Windows clock says today is July 6th, and it says it's 10:32 a.m. I'm going to click on it, and I'm going to click Change Date and Time because I happen to have permissions in my own computer. Change Date and Time, and I'm going to go back in time to April 15th of 2016, and I'm going to pretend that it is in fact 3:32 a.m. on April 15th. On April 15th. Click OK, then click OK again. Now you can see my Windows clock says April 15th at 3:30. Now I'm going to enter another check. Banking, write a check, and I'm going to put the proper date, July 6th, and I'm going to put the money amount of $400. I'm going to pay it from the Chase Bank account. You know, these are all typical things, and we're going to make it for delivery or something. So when we click Save and Close and scroll to the bottom, notice transaction number 42 was entered on July 1, but transaction number 43 was entered on April 15th. How could that possibly be? How could the 43rd transaction be entered 3 months before the 42nd transaction? The only logical, rational explanation is that this Windows clock had been changed before we entered this transaction. And that's how you know your Windows clock has been tampered with.